Hey everyone, I'm Steve from UI. In today's video, we are going to review the input component. Input component is also a super powerful component that will allow you to create different variations, and you will have here all the props that you can change. I'm going to do some examples, so I'm going to try to use the more complex interactions that you can create here in order for you to see me how do I do it. And in case you have any questions or comments, please do let me know. So let's start. First, we have here the type. Regular is the default, that is basically a short answer. Then you can have email, password, or phone. So let's start with the phone, because I want to create a phone number here. And the size, I'm going to leave it like this. Then the state is going to be idle by default. And we can type here is your phone number. Okay, I'm going to do this without a tooltip, but in case you want it, and if you already saw the drop-down video, you know how this works. But basically this is a tooltip, and I don't need any helper, so I'm going to turn this off. But basically the helper is here and will allow you to communicate a little extra help for your users. And I'm going to also have this not required because I'm not in a form. And I'm going to change the placeholder to something like and any phone number from my country. Okay, and then we are going to have the lead element. The lead element could be an icon, it could be a prefix, or a dropdown. So I'm going to use a dropdown because I need information here. Then you will see the custom dropdown. And you will see here a little box to insert any content that you want. Remember that I want a flag, so I'm going to use a flag that it's already in the library. And probably I'm going to leave some space here. Some padding is going to be probably okay. Probably if you don't see me using all the props, it's because some of the props are super easy to understand, but I wanted to give you a little more deep knowledge in these more advanced properties. Okay, let's continue. So now I have here my other dropdown to basically insert a component. Oops, I think the flag is broken, but this is because I'm using a padding, so probably what I need is not a padding actually, it's merge. Okay, that's perfect. We have here the other dropdown that we are going to insert, that is going to be here in the lead dropdown, and we are going to use a list component. Remember that you can use anything here that you want, and it's the same principle that we reviewed in the dropdown video. So if you want to insert anything here and that is going to be affected here in the input, you can do it. You just need to follow the same instructions from the dropdown. But for now, we are going to use the list component. So we are going to make this full width, and we are going to bind this up. But first, we are going to turn this off, and we are going to make this a single selection because the user can select only one, a country. And we are going to bind this to something that I have called country list. And I'm not going to grab the whole array because it's a lot of information, around 239 countries, I think. Yeah, a lot. So we are going to bind this only a little slice. Okay, now I have everything, and we are going to customize this a little bit. I don't have an idea, remember that the idea is important, and I'm going to show you why it's important in a moment, but let's bind this with the name. Then we will have the extra info that could be probably the dial code, yeah. And also we are going to have the country flag that is going to be the code here. Here in the lead element, I need country. I'm going to change the orientation here. And I'm going to leave space between, and remember that if this doesn't look good, it's because you have the tail element turned on. And I'm going to turn this off. Okay, now I have here the input, but as you saw, the selection is super long, so I have an option, and this is going to be exactly the same for the drop down in the elite or in the tail element, so it's going to be exactly the same. But I have the max height, so I'm going to set that like probably 50. And now I have most beautiful and with a scroll input here. Okay, now you already probably see the problem, but the problem is that everything is blue. Why everything is blue? Basically, this is because I have a single selection. And remember that for having a single selection, you need an ID. I don't have an ID right now, but for this case, I think I'm safe using the index. So let's do with the index. And then we are going to select something like Andorra. Okay, perfect. Now, how do we reflect the selection of the user here? It's going to be super easy with the list component. Basically, we're going to say here in the drop-down name, and you can change this to anything that you want by default, but I'm going to add here my list selected object that is going to be the row name. And remember, oh no, the row name, no. Let's better use the extra info here, that is basically the country code. And remember that by default you need something, so I'm going to leave this or, and I'm going to leave it like probably just that's okay. And this is important because if you go to another page and go back, you will see here that by default I have my phone number, sorry, my ID, that is +57, and I also have the flag here, and this is basically because in the flag I'm using this by default. Okay, now we can do something similar. So what we are going to do is go to the select something to actually have it, and then we are going to change the flag. So my flag is going to be so what I'm going to do is copy this, and you know what, let's make it easier. Let's here in the list have an image that is going to be the flag. Perfect. And now here we are going to bind this to my selected object that I need to select again to reflect the changes, and then I will have here in my selected object the image, and I'm going to use an OR just in case. Perfect. Now everything should be working great. So as you're seeing here, I can change anything and it's going to work perfectly. Of course, the placeholder probably doesn't need the identifier because it's already there, so we can leave it like this. And now the user can type here anything. Of course, this doesn't have any validation because this is only an example, but if I type something, it's going to type anything here. Also, we can see here in the variables that is going to be the value. So this is the value that is happening right now, and has error is a key in case the input detects an error. And how does the input detect the error? Basically, you can have any validation here, and if the result of that validation is true, every time that the user clicks outside the input is going to trigger an error. But we are going to see that in a moment with an example. Okay, perfect. Basically, you already saw this, so it's working perfectly. And if you want, you can, like I told you before, validate that it's a phone, and probably validate that the user can have a valid phone number, but that will require a little bit more of logic. So for now, I think that with this, it's okay for the first example. In the tail element, you will see that you have a dropdown. It's basically the same principle, so you just need to follow these steps that I did in order to use it in the tail element in case you want. So let's move on to the next part. That is going to be another input, but this time we are going to do the password input. We are going to, the email input. We're going to replicate a little bit the input from the templates. So we basically want here a password. We need here a password type. We don't need any helper, and for the lead element I want an icon, and for the and here I need also an icon. I'm going to go to the library, phosphor, that is my icon library, and then it's not blocked. Okay, and now we are going to look probably in return password. Okay, we have here a password, so we can change that. Remember that this should be from your library, so I'm going to do this quick. And also we need an icon here. Something that you will notice here is that there is a key called display password here. Probably you're seeing this twice because I had another input and Weweb doesn't detect when I delete one of them, so that's why. So what we are going to do is that we are going to use an icon that is going to be I and I close. So I'm going to go ahead here and use this one, and I need to go to another page only to have one of the actual values here and avoid having like the two values and confuse me. And the icon is going to be if the input display password is true, it's going to be this one, otherwise it's going to be low. And I think that's it. Perfect. Then for the placeholder, you can use anything here for your password or just like I said, this. And then when the user types this, you will see here probably that my browser is suggesting me a password, and I'm going to type anything. And you will see the value here, of course. And also, if you want, if I click this, it's going to change and it's going to allow me to see the password automatically. You don't need to do anything because the component already detects when it's a password and when it has an icon at the end, and allows the user to make basically this interaction. This will only work, of course, with the password type. So if you are trying to do that with another type, it's not going to work. Awesome. So we already have the password as well. And then finally, we are going to go and we are going to add another input, and we are going to do the email example. And in there, we are going to use here the validation. Okay. So the validation is going to be a little bit rustic because we are going to do a validation when the input detects that this is not valid. So we are going to say that it's going to be a password, no, email. And we are going to change the validation with a little bit of JavaScript and a little bit of help of the incredible AI from Weweb. And we are going to say that the value and check if this is a valid email. Of course, there is multiple ways to do this, but this is just an example, so I want to do this a little bit fast. So here you know there is a regex expression, and that is working fine. However, and I made a mistake. Remember that your logic needs to trigger a true, and if it's not valid, return true. This is because remember that here the validation says that every time that this is not your logic that you are going to implement here returns a true, is going to trigger an error. And I'm going to change this and say, oops, your email is not valid. So what is going to happen is that if I type Steve Agoa and I press outside the input, is going to trigger an error. You see? Oops, your email is not valid. But if I change this, now everything is fine. So basically you need to trigger an error, creating here any logic that you want, and the logic should return true. If the logic doesn't return true, the validation is not going to be triggered, and the user is not going to see the error. So yeah, that's it. Basically, you can create anything there, and every time that the user clicks outside the input is going to trigger the error. Perfect. And finally, we're going to combine this because I don't need this anymore. And what we are going to do is have a max length, and you will see here how many characters the input will accept. So in this case, it's going to be 16. And if I type more, it is not going to allow me to type anymore because I already have 16. And finally, here in the workflows, you will find something that is called the unchanged workflow. So what I'm going to do is that every time I type in the input, I'm going to update my upload variable, and the result is going to be upload +1. So every time that I type is going to change, and you can do anything there or any logic that you want. So, oops, this is not working, and probably this is because I only have this in the regular. So yeah, as you saw here, this is only working with the regular right now, but no worries, I'm going to make sure that this works with everything after I finish the video. So you can trigger any unchanged here. And finally, before we finish, we can also create an initial value here. The initial value will allow us to have the value here in the input that right now is empty, and we are going to bind this to anything that we want. So probably I want that the initial value is something from the country list, and I want that is going to be Afghanistan, for instance. So as you saw here, now I have an initial value, the value is here, and when I go back to another page and refresh this page, the value is going to be there as well. And that's it. I hope that this video makes sense. If you have any questions or any comments, please do let me know. I try to go super fast because this input has a lot of variations and supports a lot of things. Remember the principle of the list component, that is trying to not use everything at the same time. And if you have any questions or comments, please do let me know. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.